matapos sumabog ang gulong ng minamaneho nitong traktora.
Kamustahin po natin ang lagay ng biktima mula sa mga detalye ng balitang ibabahagi maya-maya. Magandang gabi, ako po si Ricky Mathay.
Ako si Nina Richie Alagaw Flores. Ito ang mata ng Agila International. Para naman sa mga headlines ngayong araw ng Lunes.
Philippine Consulate sa New York kinumpirmang walang Pilipinong nadamay sa Philadelphia plane crash.
Dalawang China Coast Guard ships na mataan sa baybayin ng Pangasinan.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at US President Trump magpupulong ngayong linggo.
7 katao nasawi mula sa Philadelphia plane crash.
Naka-alerto ngayon ang Philippine Consulate sa New York matapos ang panibagong plane crash sa Estados Unidos.
Anila wala pang naiulat na Pilipinong naapektuhan o nadamay sa bumagsak na eroplano sa Philadelphia. Sa ngayon, patuloy ang pakikipag-ugnayan ng Philippine Consulate sa Filipino community organizations at mga local authorities para matukoy kung may naapektuhang Pinoy sa trahedya. Tiniyak naman ng konsulado na nakahanda silang magbigay ng tulong sakaling may mga Pilipino ngang biktima ng plane crash. Ilang araw pa lamang ang nakalilipas matapos ang trahedyang naganap sa Washington, D.C. kung saan isang hepe ng Philippine National Police o PNP ang nadamay sa isang mid-air collision sa pagitan ng isang eroplano ng American Airlines at isang Black Hawk helicopter.
Kinumpirma naman ni Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo na nasa maayos na kalagayan ang mga Pilipino sa Estados Unidos sa kabila ng ipinatutupad na crackdown sa illegal immigrants ni US President Donald Trump. Ayon sa kalihim, maganda ang naging reputasyon ng mga Pilipino roon dahil na rin sa naging performance nila sa iba't ibang industriya at naging kontribusyon nila sa kanilang pinapasukang mga trabaho. Binigyan din ng Department of Foreign Affairs na maraming naitulong ang mga Pilipino roon sa larangan ng healthcare, banking, hotel services at management. Subalit, kahit may kontribusyon ang mga Pilipino sa US ay nananatiling hindi exempted ang mga ito sa mass deportation ng Trump administration, lalo na kapag ang isang Pinoy ay nasangkot sa iligal na gawain. Una na pong iniulat ni Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez, na nasa 80 Filipinos ang sumasailalim sa proseso ng deportation.
Sa patuloy na pag-aalboroto ng bulkang Canlaon sa Negros Island ay nakapagtala ang PHIVOLCS ng 16 na volcanic earthquakes sa loob ng 24 oras. Kabilang narito ang 5 volcanic tremors na naitala kaninang madaling araw. Nakapagtala rin ang ahensya ng 5 ash emissions mula sa bulkan. Nagbuga rin ng 4,975 tonelada ng sulfur dioxide ang Canlaon, gayon din ay naglabas ito ng 400-meter tall na itim na usok. Patuloy namang inflated o maga ang ilang bahagi ng bulkan. Sa kasalukuyan, nasa alert level 3 ang bulkang Canlaon. Ibig sabihin, ipinagbabawal ang pagpasok sa 6-kilometer radius danger zone at pagpapalipad ng aircraft malapit sa bukana nito.
Kahit hindi naabot ang target na economic growth na 6.5% noong taong 2024, kabilang pa rin po ang Pilipinas sa fastest-growing economies sa Asia-Pacific. Ayon kay Budget and Management Secretary Amena Pangandaman, dahil ito sa tulong na rin ng mga economic managers ng pamahalaan. Tinukoy naman ni Pangandaman na ang programang Build Better More ang isa sa mga pangunahing dahilan ng paglago ng ekonomiya ng Pilipinas, partikular na sa infrastructure sector na tumaas ng 7.8% sa fourth quarter ng 2024 at 10.3% para sa buong taon. Samantala, lumago rin ang government final consumption expenditure ng 9.7% dahil sa mas epektibong paggamit ng pondo ng gobyerno. Lumabas sa immigration records na mga hinihinalang Chinese spies na inaresto kamakailan ay ilang dekada nang naninirahan sa Pilipinas. Ayon kay Bureau of Immigration Commissioner Joel Anthony Viado, ang iba sa mga nahuling suspect ay nandito na sa bansa simula pa noong taong 2002 at nagsipag-asawa na ng mga Pilipina. Bago pa man anya na pag-alaman ng National Bureau of Investigation o NBI at ng Armed Forces of the Philippines o AFP na mga espiya raw ang mga suspect ay may hawak na mga working visas ang mga ito at nagtatrabaho sa San Juan at sa Maynila. Nakikipagtulungan na anya ang Bureau of Immigration sa Department of Justice, NBI at maging sa militar upang mangalap ng karagdagang impormasyon ukol sa mga suspect. Sinabi rin ni Viado na seryoso ang kanilang ahensya sa pagsisikap na mapigilan ang mga undesirable aliens sa pang-aabuso sa mabuting pakikitungo ng mga Pilipino. Ipinagpaliban din ng immigration ang pagde-deport sa mga pinaghihinalaang espiya dahil dapat muna nilang humarap ang mga ito sa paglilitis sa hukuman at pagsilbihan ang kanilang mga sentensya bago sila i-deport ng Pilipinas pabalik ng China.
Dalawang barko ng China Coast Guard o CCG ang namataan ng Philippine Coast Guard o PCG sa baybayin ng Pangasinan. Agad na dineploy ng PCG ang BRP Cabra at Bagakay upang bantayan ang mga Chinese vessel na may bow number 3301 at 3304 na nasa layong 34 nautical miles mula Bolinao. Nagpadala rin ng radio challenges ang PCG sa CCG, ngunit tiko mambibig ng mga tauhan ng CCG sa sinasabi ng Pilipinas na illegal ang ginagawa ng China sa loob ng exclusive economic zone ng Pilipinas. Kinumpirma ni PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela, na lumapit pa ang dalawang barko sa baybayin ng Luna, La Union. Tinatansyang nasa 70 hanggang 75 nautical miles ang layo nito sa nasabing probinsya. Ito na anya ang pinakamalapit na paglapit ng CCG sa lupain ng Pilipinas. Nagtagumpay naman ang BRP Teresa Magbanwa dahil naitaboy nito ang monster ship ng China papalayo ng baybayin ng Zambales. Sinabi ni Tariela na committed ang PCG na pigilan ng China sa illegal na deployment ng puwersang pandagat nito sa West Philippine Sea.
Asahan naman pong sasalubong ang dagdag bawas sa presyo ng mga produktong petrolyo ngayong unang linggo ng Pebrero. Pagpatak ng alas 6 ng umaga, ipatutupad na po ang dagdag na 70 centavos sa presyo ng kada litro ng gasolina. Habang 1.15 naman ang bawas sa presyo ng kada litro sa diesel at 90 centimos ang tapyas sa presyo naman ng kada litro ng kerosene o gas. Susunod, Taiwan ipinagbawal ang paggamit ng DeepSeek AI.
U.S. State Secretary Marco Rubio nagtungo sa Panama.
At trade wars sa pagitan ng US, Mexico at Canada magsisimula na. Mga detalye po ng mga balita yan at iba pa sa pagbabalik ng Mata ng Agila International.
This Sunday on Cine Throwback.
There's no stripes.
What is no stripes? Different.
Don't listen to them. You are the one I've been waiting for. It was foretold that a half-striped zebra would be born.
You are not half a zebra. Your name is Kumba.
This Sunday, 12 p.m. here on NET25.
Let's get together. Sa NET25. Sa NET25.
Ipinagbawal ng Taiwan ang paggamit ng DeepSeek sa lahat ng ahensya ng gobyerno at kritikal na infrastruktura. Sa isang statement, sinabi ng Taiwan Ministry of Digital Affairs na ang DeepSeek AI service ay isang produkto ng China at maaari niya itong mailagay sa panganib ang kanilang national information security. Saklawan niya ng operasyon nito ang cross-border transmission at information leakage at iba pang impormasyon na may kinalaman sa security concerns. Una rito, matagal nang inaakusahan ng Taiwan at China na gumagamit ito ng gray zone tactics laban sa kanila, kabilang ang cyber attack sa gitna ng pag-aangkin ng higanting bansa sa Taiwan bilang parte umano ng kanilang teritoryo. Ang DeepSeek ay isang libreng AI-powered chatbot na gawa ng China na gumagana tulad ng ChatGPT. Napaka-advance nito, subalit mayroon itong seryosong problema pagdating sa privacy ng users, lalo na kung paano nito kinakalap at iniimbak ang user data. Kamakailan ay napaulat na ipinagbawal ng US Navy ang DeepSeek app sa security at ethical grounds dahil sa mga concerns kaugnay sa pinagmulan at gamit ng naturang AI model. Ilang mga bansa na rin ang kumwestiyon sa data practices ng Chinese AI startup, kabilang ang South Korea, Ireland, France, Australia at Italy. Sa pagdinig ng Senado ukol sa isyu ng ayuda mula sa Kapos ang Kita o AKAP program ng gobyerno, ay hinahanap ni Senator Amy Marcos ang listahan ng AKAP beneficiaries, ang Department of Social Welfare and Development o DSWD at ang Department of Labor and Employment o DOLE. Pero walang listahan, walang pangalan at hindi rin naipaliwanag ng dalawang ahensya kay Senator Amy kung sino-sinong mga minimum wage earners ang tatanggap ng pondo ng AKAP. Kinwestiyon tuloy ng senadora kung paano matutukoy ng DSWD at ng DOLE kung sino ang tamang AKAP beneficiaries, gayong wala rin palang malinaw na guidelines tungkol dito.
Wala silang listahan ng informal, contractual, and less than minimum wage. Saan natin hahanapin yung mahihirap na yan? Depende sa congressman, sa barangay kapitan, sa senador.
At iba pang
May
mga...
listahan ba kayo? May direktoryo ba ng minimum wage earner?
Wala pong pangalan. Ang meron lang po na available yung numero ng mga minimum wage. Ng mga minimum wage.
Malalaman kung sino yung tamang beneficiary. Wala naman pala kayong listahan ng minimum wage earner. Pero ang maliwanag, walang listahan ng minimum wage earner ngayon. Sa DOLE man o sa DSWD.
Wala po.
At ito ang target ng AKAP, ngunit hindi maliwanag kung sino sila. Wala kayong pangalan.
Paliwanag pa ng senadora, ang impormasyong nakuha niya sa Employers Association of the Philippines ay aabot lang sa 2 milyon ang sumusweldo ng minimum. Kaya lang taliwas ito sa datos ng DOLE na nagsasabing halos nasa 5 milyon ang minimum wage earners. Tanong tuloy ni Senator Amy sa DSWD at sa DOLE, paanong masisiguro na hindi magagamit ang AKAP ng mga kandidato ngayong kampanya at ang makikinabang nito ay ang mga tamang beneficiaries. Nalilito na rin niya ang publiko dahil dapat angkop ang guidelines sa direktiba ni Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Tutuklasin pa. Sa ngayon, andyan na yung pera, andyan yung programa, hindi alam kung kanino pamimigay. Tama?
Nag-i-inspect po kami ng mga kumpanya, nalalaman po namin kung sino yung mga kababayan po natin na minimum wage earner at hindi mga minimum wage earner. Although may limitation din po at ang unang limitation, walang pangalan.
Hindi nga workers yung PWD at saka senior eh. So hindi sila qualified. Litong-lito po kami. At kung yan ang guidelines na ibibigay sa COMELEC, hindi ko alam kung angkop yan sa utos ng Pangulo na dapat maliwanag.
Would that,
Bakit pepremyohan ng akap yung mga labag sa batas?
ang pepremyuhan po natin, quote and unquote, yung mga manggagawa. Although may separate pong proseso in requiring employers to pay workers the required minimum wage.
Sasagipin yung employee at walang parusa sa employer?
Meron po. It does not set aside the liability of the employer from paying minimum wage.
Habang naglalabag sa batas yung employer, ang pamahalaan ng gobyerno muna ang magbabayad ng akap. Tama ba?
Kinwestiyon rin ng ilang grupo ang AKAP dahil bakit daw unahing bigyan ng tulong ang may trabaho gayong milyong-milyong mga Pilipino ang walang income. At mas marami rin anilang mahihirap ang nangangailangan ng ayuda gaya ng mga sumasahod ng mas mababa pa sa minimum. Inireklamo rin ni Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong ang anyay matinding korupsyon sa pamamahagi ng AKAP. Present daw kasi ang mga politiko sa distribusyon at ang pamamahagi ay depende anya sa endorsement ng isang mambabatas.
Lalo silang gumagaling kasi tuwing natatakpan, very creative sila, very innovative sila. Nagkakaroon sila lalo ng mga paraan kung paano magkaroon ng workaround, sa mga projects. Another source of corruption. According sa ibang mga mayors, nagugulat sila na ang pinirmahan ng mga beneficiaries blank kasi sa dami mapipirma na lang. Only to find out na ang naibigay sa kanila 3,000, mababalitaan na lang nila 5,000 pala yung nilagan.
Sa iba ang mga balita, ayon sa Ukrainian Special Forces ay umalis na sa Kursk region ang mga sundalo ng North Korea. Hinala ng Ukraine, pinull out ang mga sundalo ng Pyongyang dahil sa matinding bakbakan doon na siyang dahilan kung bakit daw natatalo ang Russia sa Kursk. Sinabi ng ilang media sources na humigit kumulang sa 11,000 reinforcements ang pinadala ng North Korea para tulungan ang Russia sa pakikitigma nito sa Ukraine. Subalit, nasa 1,000 sundalo na ng North Korea ang namatay doon sa loob lamang po yan ng 3 buwan. Parehong hindi nagkomento ang North Korea at Russia sa nasabing issue.
Samantala, hindi kinatuwa ng North Korea ang pagtawag ni U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio na isa itong rogue state. Sinabi ng North Korean Foreign Ministry na ang komento ni Rubio ay hindi nakatutulong sa mga interes ng Estados Unidos at nagbabala ito na tutugon ng Pyongyang sa provokasyon na ginawa ng Estados Unidos. Kinastigo rin ng Pyongyang ang plano ni President Donald Trump na magtayo ito ng isang American Iron Dome missile shield. Ang hakbang anya na ito ay pagbibigay katwiran para sa isang arms race. Nilagdaan ni Trump noong nakaraang linggo ang isang executive order na nag-uutos na gumawa ng isang American Iron Dome, isang next generation na U.S. missile defense shield na kayang labanan ng mga ballistic, hypersonic at cruise missiles maging iba pang uri ng aerial attacks.
Sinabi ni Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky na nagbigay ang Estados Unidos ng $177 billion na pondo para sa pakikidigma ng Kyiv laban sa Moscow. Subalit, ang natanggap lamang daw niya ay $70 billion na halaga ng mga armas, mga sasakyan at humanitarian aid at hindi raw pera ang galing sa Estados Unidos. Hindi raw niya alam kung saan napunta ang buong pondo. Sa ngayon ay hindi pa naglalabas ng anumang pahayag ang Washington hinggil sa sinabi ni Zelensky. Umalma naman ang mga taga-Panama City dahil sa pagbisita ni U.S. State Secretary Marco Rubio roon. Ang protesta ay dahil sa umiinit na tensyon ukol sa umano'y pagkontrol ng U.S. sa Panama Canal. Leslie Gumarang po para sa balitang yan.
Dose-dose ng demonstrador sa Ciudad de Panama ang umokupa sa mga kalye mapalit sa pambansang universidad. Karamihan sa kanila ay mga estudyante at mga propesor na laban sa pagbisita ni U.S. State Secretary Mark Rubio na sadya ang pag-uusap ukol sa pagbawi ng kontrol sa Panama Canal.
La visita del secretario de Estado de este nuevo gobierno viene a este país a imponer, lo cual es una falta de respeto a la autonomía y la autodeterminación de los pueblos. El canal es de Panamá, no importa cuánto quieran ellos recuperar un caudal económico, este canal pertenece a este país.
Queremos dejar bien en claro al gobierno de que no aceptamos ninguna negociación que implique enajenación de nuestro territorio. Nosotros no vamos a regresar al pasado, en donde los gringos controlaban no solamente el canal, sino parte del territorio panameño.
Kamakailan ay tinanggihan na ni Panamanian President Jose Raul Molino ang anumang negosasyon ukol sa pagkontrol sa kanal bago pa ang pagdating ni Rubio sa bansa. Ang pagdalaw na ito ni Rubio ay bahagi ng kanyang unang international tour bilang Secretary of State ng Estados Unidos. Ito ay sa gitna ng umuugong na pag-aalala tungkol sa impluwensya ng China sa rehiyon. Layon din ng diplomatikong misyon na ito ni Rubio ang pagtalakay sa irregular migration na dumadaan sa Darien Jungle at sa isyu ng seguridad sa rehiyon. Kasama sa dadalawin ni Rubio sa gitnang Amerika ay ang El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala at ang Dominican Republic. Leslie Gumarang para sa Mata ng Agila International, Trusted, Connected, On Point.
Inanunsyo ng Canada ang kanilang retaliatory tariffs laban sa Estados Unidos.
Today, the United States informed us they will be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy. A decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th. Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives.
Ang nasabing hakbang ay pagsisimula ng trade wars sa pagitan ng magkatabing bansa. Ayon kay Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, mayroong 25% na ipapataw nitong taripa sa mga produkto ng Estados Unidos gaya ng ibang perishable products, household appliance at mga sporting goods. Dagdag pa ni Trudeau na tinapatan lamang nila ang hakbang na ipinatupad ng US laban sa Canada at Mexico at ang dagdag na 10% na taripa sa China. Giit pa ng Canadian Prime Minister, hindi siya susuko sa paglaban sa mga mamamayan nito pero nagbabala ng negatibong kakaharapin sa mga taong nasa border ng bawat bansa. Ang taripa sa 30 billion na halaga ng mga produkto ng US ay ipapatupad sa araw ng Martes at dagdag na 125 billion para sa 21 days para mabigyan ng panahon na makapag-adjust ang mga negosyante mula sa Canada. Magugunitang kaya ipinatupad ni Trump ang pagpataw ng mga taripa dahil sa pangamba laban sa illegal na immigrations at drug trafficking.
First, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery store, gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago.
Bumuelta naman si Donald Trump sa pag-alma ng Canada kung saan sinabi nitong pagbabayaran ng gobyerno ng Canada ang naturang pagsisimula nila ng trade war laban sa Estados Unidos.
Well, it could happen. If they do anything, we will. Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada. And something's going to happen there.
At desidido po si US President Donald Trump na tuparin ang banta nitong pagpapataw ng 25% na border taxes sa mga produkto mula Canada at Mexico.
But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. Mexico, we've had very good talks with them. And this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada. And we're not going to allow that.
Ayon kay Trump, na kagaya ng kanyang naipangako, ay hindi na mapipigilan ang pagpapatupad nito sa unang araw ng Pebrero. Ang nasabing hakbang niya ay matugunan ang problema sa mataas na bilang ng mga undocumented migrants at ang pagpasok ng fentanyl drug sa border ng US. Plano rin ni Trump na magpataw ng dagdag na taripa sa mga produkto naman mula sa China. Magugunitang noong ito ay nangangampanya, ay binantaan niya na papatawan ng 60% na taripa ang mga produkto na galing ng China.
I'm speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow morning, and I'm also speaking with Mexico tomorrow morning. And I don't expect anything very dramatic. We put tariffs on. They owe us a lot of money. And I'm sure they're going to pay. They have to balance out their trade, number one. They've got to stop people from pouring into our country, and we've stopped it. They haven't stopped it. We've stopped it. They have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. Fentanyl has killed, this year, at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
Mr. President, you're going to the border.
Samantala, nakatakdang bumiyahe sa Estados Unidos si Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu upang bisitahin si Donald Trump.
Can confirm that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be here on Tuesday, February 4th, for a working meeting and visit with the president. And I'm sure you will all be here, very excited to cover that visit.
Kinumpirma ng opisina ni Donald Trump ang gagawing pulong nito kay US President Donald Trump sa araw ng Miyerkules. Siya ang unang world leader na formal na makakaharap si Trump mula nang umupo ito sa pwesto sa White House. Ilan sa mga nakahanay na pag-usapan nila ay ang kaganapan sa Gaza, lagay ng mga hostages at mga hamon na dulot ng mga kaalyado ng Iran. Magugunitang sa kampanya noon ni Trump ay sinabi niyang uunahin niyang tapusin ang kaguluhan sa pagitan ng Israel at ng Hamas. Ayon kay Netanyahu, ang nasabing kumpirmasyon sa pagkikita ng dalawang lider ay nagsibol sa pagpapatupad ng ceasefire sa pagitan ng Israel at Hamas.
I'm leaving for a very important meeting with President Trump in Washington. The fact that this would be President Trump's first meeting with a foreign leader since his inauguration is telling. I think it's a testimony to the strength of the Israeli-American alliance It's also a testimony to the strength of our personal friendship. That friendship and that cooperation has already yielded important results for Israel in the Middle East, including the historic Abraham Accords that President Trump led and which brought 4 historic peace treaties between Israel and its Arab neighbors. In this meeting, we'll deal with important issues, critical issues facing Israel and our region, a victory over Hamas, achieving the release of all our hostages, and dealing with the Iranian terror axis and all its components, an axis that threatens the peace of Israel, the Middle East, and the entire world. The decisions we made in the war have already changed the face of the Middle East. Our decisions and the courage of our soldiers have redrawn the map. But I believe that working closely with President Trump, we can redraw it even further and for the better. I believe that we can strengthen security, broaden the circle of peace, and achieve a remarkable era of peace through strength. Thank you very much.
At hindi naman nakailigtas ang United Kingdom at European Union mula sa Trump tariffs. Nanindigan po si US President Donald Trump na isasama niya sa listahan ang UK at EU. Anya, may trade deficit ang Estados Unidos sa lahat halos ng bansa. Hindi anya ito patas, kaya dapat na itong mabago. Gayunpaman ay pwede anya magpulong sila ni British Prime Minister Keir Starmer dahil mabait umano itong tao.
Susunod, Toronto nanganganib ang food security.
NBA, nayanig pa rin sa balita ng Luka Doncic trade.
Detalye ng mga balitang yan at iba pang mga balita sa pagbabalik ng mata ng Agila International.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa new era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Matatag ang paninindigan. Matapang sa pagresponde. Matapat sa paglilingkod. Patikang tagapagbalita. Mata natin sa balitaan. Alex Santos. Kasama gabi-gabi sa mata ng Agila Primetime.
Higit po sa 200,000 na katao ang inilikas patungo sa mga temporary shelters dahil sa malawakang pagbaha sa Australia. Kinumpirma ni Queensland Premier David Crisafulli na isang babae ang namatay matapos tumaob ang sinasakyan nitong rescue boat. Ipinaabot naman ni Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese ang kanyang pakikiramay sa pamilya ng nasawing biktima. Inabisuhan naman ng Queensland Department of Environment, Science and Innovation ang mga residenteng mag-ingat sa mga buwayang nagtatago sa tubig baha. Batay naman sa ulat ng Australian Bureau of Meteorology, umabot na sa 600 millimeters ang naitirang tubig ulan na bumuhos sa maraming lugar sa bansa. Inaasahan pa rin ang malalakas na pagbuhos ng ulan na maaaring pagsimula naman ng mga flash floods.
Inabisuhan ng emergency authorities sa Greece ang mga residente ng isla ng Santorini matapos ang sunod-sunod na pagyanig ng lupa sa lugar. Ayon sa Civil Protection Ministry, nakapagtala sila ng magnitude 4.3 na lindol nitong araw ng Biyernes at Sabado. Paliwanag ng ministry, walang kaugnay o walang kinaugnay ang alinmang volcanic activity sa naganap na lindol sa isla. Kalinsabay nito ay pansamantalang sinuspindi muna ang pasok sa mga paaralan doon. Inalerto na rin ang lokal na pamahalaan ng Santorini ang rescuer teams sakaling may mga taong masaktan dahil sa mga pagguho ng lupa. Tinagurian bilang Instagram Island ang Santorini dahil sa photogenic na golden light mula sa magagandang tanawin nito.
Noong Sabado, kinumpirma ng US National Transportation Safety Board o NTSB na ang medevac plane na bumagsak sa Philadelphia, USA ay isang aksidente. 7 katao ang nasawi sa nasabing trahedya. Alamin po natin ang mga detalye ng balitang yan mula pa rin kay Anna Quay.
Allahu Akbar!
7 katao ang namatay nang bumagsak ang isang medevac plane ilang sandali matapos itong mag-take off noong Biyernes sa Philadelphia.
Yesterday at about 18:06 Eastern Standard Time, a Learjet 55, Mexican registration, X-ray Alpha-Uniform Charlie India, call sign Mike Tango Sierra 056, was destroyed when it crashed into a commercial and residential area shortly after takeoff from Northeast Philadelphia Airport, with 6 people on board, including 2 crew members.
Dinitalya ni NTSB Senior Investigator Ralph Hicks kung paanong bumagsak ang eroplano.
The aircraft climbed to about 1,500 feet above the ground. We were looking at GPS data on the aircraft, a slight right turn followed by a slight left turn, and then a steep descent towards the ground where it crashed. The entire flight lasted less than a minute.
Kasama sa mga nasawi ang isang bata at 5 iba pa na nakasakay sa eroplano at isang tao sa pinagbagsakan nito. Ayon sa Mexico, lahat ng lula ng medevac ay Mexican nationals. Ayon sa ulat, ang batang nasawi ay patungong Tijuana kasama ang kanyang ina na namatay rin. Sa kasalukuyan, sinusuri pa rin ng NTSB ang lugar ng aksidente, kung kaya't nakikiusap ito sa mga residente na hanggat maaari ay huwag lumapit sa pinangyarihan ng insidente.
There is a substantial impact on the entire community. The debris field extends 4 or 5 blocks. And I do want to stress that this is an active investigation scene. The debris is scattered. It is very dangerous, and so I encourage everyone to stay out of the accident site. It's very dangerous. You'll see over the next several days, possibly extending into weeks, where we will be collecting that debris, loading it onto a truck, and moving it to a secure location so that we can begin to do our evaluation of that debris. Now, I do want to mention we are still looking for the cockpit voice recorder. We have located the 2 engines, but for the cockpit voice recorder, we're still looking for it. It could be intact, but likely it is damaged. It may be fragmented.
Ang pagbagsak ng medevac ay kasunod ng mid-air collision naman ng isang American Airlines jet at ng isang US Army Black Hawk helicopter noong Miyerkules sa Washington, D.C. na ikinamatay ng 67 katao.
The question is, how do we deal with two major collisions in a span of days? We are a very small federal agency. Most people aren't aware that we only have 436 employees at the NTSB, and that spans all modes of transportation. For aviation safety, we have a number of investigators because our mandate is to do quite more than the other modes of transportation, where we're doing every civil aviation accident in the United States. We also do serve as accredited representative for foreign investigations as well. So in this case, we had to have a highly skilled team focused on certain areas that are at DCA for that plane crash, and then we have a number of other investigators that are not on call for that crash that we can deploy here.
Ana Cui para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Nagtamo ng maraming sugat sa katawan ng isang driver sa India matapos tumilapon mula sa sinasakyan nitong traktora. Ayon sa lokal na ulat, nagmamaneho sa kahabaan ng kalsada ng Muzaffarnagar sa Uttar Pradesh ang driver. Mula sa nakalap na CCTV footage ay mapapansin na bigla na lamang sumabog ang gulong ng traktora. Dito na nawala ng kontrol ang driver sa kanyang sinasakyan. Matapos ang aksidente ay agad na dinala naman ng driver sa ospital. Iniimbestigahan naman ng mga otoridad ang sanhi ng pagsabog ng gulong ng naturang traktora.
Dahil po sa labis na kakulangan ng food access na maraming residente ng Toronto, Canada, nagdeklara na ang mayor nito ng isang food insecurity emergency. Alamin natin kung ano-anong mga hakbang ang ginagawa ngayon ng pinakapopuladong lungsod ng Canada upang labanan ang emergency na ito. NET25 correspondent Cherry Recolizado para sa report.
Idineklara ng mayor ng Toronto na si Olivia Chow na opisyal na emergency ang food insecurity sa buong lungsod. Isa sa bawat 4 na kabahayan sa Toronto ay nakararanas ng food insecurity at isa sa bawat 4 na kabahayan ay umaasa sa food banks. Noong nakaraang taon, nagtala ang Daily Bread Food Bank ng 3.75 milyong pagbisita, kabilang ang halos 154,000 sa kanila na unang beses gumamit ng kanilang serbisyo. Isang nakababahalang patunay ng lumalalang krisis sa gutom sa Toronto na patuloy pang lumalala. Ang anunsyong ito ay nagpapasimula ng iba't ibang mga hakbangin tulad ng pagdaragdag ng mas maraming paaralan at pagpapataas ng pondo para sa school food program, poverty reduction strategy at food charter. Dahil rin sa anunsyong ito, naging isang agarang pangangailangan ang food insecurity sa Toronto at itataas ang kamalayan ng nakararami ukol sa krisis na ito. Ayon sa Daily Bread Food Bank, ang hakbang na ito ay magtutulak sa pamahalaang provincial at federal na magbigay ng karagdagang suportang pinansyal at maglaan ng puhunan para sa abot-kayang pabahay at pagpapabuti ng mga trabaho, mga aspeto na malalim na nakaugnay sa food insecurity. Cherry Recolizado, Toronto, Ontario, para sa NET25 News.
Namataan sa kalangitan ng hilagang kanlurang syudad ng Salta sa Argentina ang tinatawag na pancake clouds. Ang mga ulap na ito ay talagang kilala sa tawag na lenticular clouds dahil sa malalenting itsura nito. Karaniwang namumuo ang mga lenticular clouds sa mga bulubunduking lugar. Paliwanag naman ng mga eksperto dahil sa irisation o kakaibang kulay sa mga ulap kaya nagiging pancake-like ang texture nito. Noong Sabado ay tinupad na ni US President Donald Trump ang banta nitong dagdag taripa. Inuna ng bagong pwestong Pangulo ang mga bansang Mexico, Canada at China. Sinasabing ito ay nagbabadyang simula ng giyera sa kalakalan o kaya tinatawag na trade war sa pagitan ng Estados Unidos at ng pinakamalalakas na economic partners nito. Nakatakdang magsimula ang taripa sa Martes. Si NJ de Guzman para sa report.
Bukod sa pinangangambahang pagtaas na naman ng presyo ng mga bilihin dahil sa dagdag taripa na ipapataw ng Trump administration simula Martes sa mga bansang Canada, China at Mexico, sinasabing ito ay mitsa rin ng trade war sa pagitan ng US at ng tatlong bansa. Ayon kay Chubuwi na isang financial analyst, hindi lamang ang apat na bansang ito ang maapektuhan ng labanan ng taripa, kundi ang buong mundo.
These actions taken by the U.S. government, we're gonna increase the overall economic uncertainty in the world. There are gonna be quite some market volatility coming in because we understand that actually U.S. threaten the trading partners that if they retaliate, U.S. will gonna impose even higher tariffs on those countries. So we may see a series of trade war and conflicts, and this may actually increase the world economic uncertainty, and actually there will be some economic protectionism, trade protectionism coming in.
Noong Sabado, lumagda na si Trump ng kautusan ukol sa 25% tariffs sa mga produkto mula Mexico at Canada at 10% naman sa imports mula China. Sinasabing bubulabugin ng mga taripang ito ang higit sa $2.1 trillion na halaga ng taunang kalakal. Bilang ganti, tumugon na ang Mexico at Canada gamit ang kani-kanilang counter-tariffs mitsa na nakapipinsalang trade war sa pagitan ng global economic partners. Noong Sabado, sinabi ni Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau na magpapataw ang kanyang bansa ng 25% tariffs sa US products naman na papasok ng Canada. Ito ay sa kalakalang nagkakahalaga ng 155 billion Canadian dollars o 106.5 billion US dollars. Samantala, sinabi naman ni Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum na aaksyon din ito upang protektahan ng Mexico. Sa kabilang banda, sinabi ni Chu na maaaring makabuti sa China ang labanan ng taripang ito.
China basically, the trade war may actually, in some sense, may be good because China is currently under deflation pressure. So this making the imported goods more expensive may actually, in some sense, may actually benefit the domestic manufacturers in China. So in a sense, it may actually help counter the deflationary pressure.
Subalit sa pambuong mundong antas, ani Chu, lalong magkakabahagi ang international community pagdating sa kalakalan. Ibig lamang sabihin, magugulo ng husto ang global economy.
Previously, we know before 2018, right, the world economies are getting more and more closely integrated, right? People are talking about global supply chain, the global economy. Basically, we are all a citizen of the earth. But now things are totally different. I would say now the world economy becomes more and more segmented, and this trade war, this mutual blows of tariffs against each other, we're gonna make the situation even worse.
Ipinaliwanag ni Chu kung paano namang maapektuhan ang mga mamimili sa US kung gaano ang idaragdag nito sa gastusin ng pangkaraniwang pamilya.
The average US household will gonna see their annual expense increase by about $2,600. $2,600 is quite a large amount, I would say, for an average US household with $30,000 to $50,000 of annual income. So this expense is gonna be quite significant. And I would say this will also add to the inflation pressure in the US. So for US, I think that's the reason why Trudeau says that the US consumer is going to suffer.
Sa gitna ng lahat ng ito, naghahanda ang mga pamilya dito sa bansa kung paanong pagkakasyahin ang kinikita sa nagbabadyang pagtaas na naman ng presyo ng mga pangunahing bilihin. NJ De Guzman para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Nako, tila hindi pa rin makapaniwala ang basketball world sa nangyaring blockbuster trade ng Dallas Mavericks kay Luka Doncic bago matapos ang NBA trade deadline. Hindi kasi makapaniwala ang Mavs fans na pakakawalan nila Hindi kasi makapaniwala ang Mavs fans na pakakawalan nila ang star guard na si Luka Doncic kapalit si Lakers big man Anthony Davis. Itinuturing ng Lakers fans na isang matinding kaparehas na ng star player na si LeBron James, ang 25-year-old at 5-time All-Star Slovenian player. Sa panig naman ng Dallas, sinabi ng kanilang general manager na si Nico Harrison na sa pagkakakuha nila kay Davis ay lalong mapapalakas ang kanilang depensa. Naniniwala kasi ito na para magkampiyon ang isang team, dapat ay matinding depensa ang pairalin.
How do you see this working out well for the organization in the long term?
Well, I think the long term is the time frame. I think he fits our time frame. If you pair him with Kyrie and the rest of the guys, he fits right along with our time frame to win now and win in the future. And the future to me is 3-4 years from now. The future 10 years from now, I don't know. I don't think they probably bury me and Jay by then, or we bury ourselves.
Yes.
Maging ang buong Lakers team ay nagulat sa nasabing trade kung saan sinabi rin ni James na wala siyang ideya na magkakatotoo ang trade. Ang balita ng trade ay nagdulot ng pagkabigla sa mga fans at mga manlalaro at may mga nagtatanong kung ano ang talagang dahilan ng biglaang pagpapalit. Hindi pa malinaw sa ngayon kung kailan makakalaro sina Doncic at Davis para sa kani-kanilang koponan dahil kapwa sila may mga iniindang injury at wala pang tiyak na petsa ng kanilang pagbabalik NBA.
Pumanaw na po ang aktres na si Barbie Sue, ang Taiwanese actress na nakilala sa kanyang role bilang si Shan Kai sa sikat na teleserye noon na Meteor Gardens sa edad na 48. Ayon sa ulat ng local Chinese news portal, pumanaw si Sue dahil sa sakit na pneumonia na dulot umano ng trangkaso habang ito ay nasa bakasyon sa Japan. Habang sa iba pang ulat na nakalap ng local news sa Taiwan na nakausap umano ang kapatid ni Barbie na si Di Sue at kinumpirma umano nitong kasama sila ng aktres na nagbakasyon sa Japan.
Nagwagi ang award-winning singer-songwriter na si Beyonce ng Album of the Year para sa Cowboy Carter sa 67th Grammy Awards. Nalo ni Beyonce sa prestihiyosong award-giving body. Kinilala si Beyonce sa kanyang bagong release na album, ang kanyang ika-8 studio album. Ang nasabing album,
We're gonna dedicate this one to the city. Compton, Watts, yeah, Long Beach.
Habang wagi naman si Kendrick Lamar ng Song of the Year para sa kanyang Smile. Ang rapper naman na si Doechii para sa Best Rap Album at Chappell Roan para sa Best New Artist.
At narito po kami para maghatid ng balita saan mang dako ng mundo. Happy Monday everyone. Ako po muli si Ricky Matay.
Ako si Nina Richie Alago Flores. Ito ang Mata ng Agila International. Para naman po sa mga balitang nanggaling din sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, punta tayo kay Alma Angeles para sa Mata ng Agila World News. Take it away, Alma.
Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines, President Donald Trump said the sweeping tariffs that he has imposed on Mexico, Canada, and China may cause short-term pain for Americans. As global markets reflected concerns, the levies could undermine growth and reignite inflation.
No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. So we're going to change that. We're going to change it fast. We're going to make America great again.
And the news starts now. U.S. President Donald Trump admits the sweeping tariffs that he has imposed on Canada, Mexico, and China may cause some pain for Americans. And less than 2 weeks into his second White House term, Trump is defending the tariffs as necessary to curb illegal immigration and the drug trade. And stock traders in the three countries, which are the largest U.S. trading partners, have signaled hope that the trade war will not last long. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
Saturday afternoon, Trump announced a 25% tariff on all Mexican goods and most Canadian products. The only exception is energy from Canada, which has a 10% tariff. Chinese exports will face a 10% surcharge as well. The tariffs go into effect tomorrow. Canada has been quick to respond. Shortly after Trump's announcement, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced tariffs of his own on what he calls everyday items imported from the U.S.
Fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more.
Trudeau says while the tariffs will hurt Canada, there will also be consequences in the United States, and he tells Americans Trump is doing them no favor by starting a trade war.
Tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery store, gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum.
So, what does the American president think about that? Trump says defiantly that Canada doesn't have anything that America needs.
We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody.
And while Trump says his strategy will entail some pain for Americans, he does not specify what form it will take or how deep it will be. Best to be stocking up on some painkillers. Meanwhile, Trudeau has some advice for his American counterpart.
President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States. The better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
That advice Trump will likely ignore. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Likeness. Thomas, how are Canadians reacting to the tariffs? What's the mood of the people there?
Alma, people are definitely annoyed. And some say they feel betrayed. They thought the U.S. was an ally, our friend. You know, we've had free trade between the two countries for decades, and it's worked well. If this persists, there will be job losses, and there could be a possible recession if it goes on for too long. But a lot of people just don't see the point of it all. Why start a fight over nothing? Like I said, free trade has been going on for decades and it's worked well. Trump claims he's doing this because of the drug trade, fentanyl being smuggled into the U.S. from Canada. Well, in fact, the amount of fentanyl that comes from here is just 1% of what makes its way to the streets of America. The rest comes from China and Mexico. Now, other days, Trump claims the U.S. is being treated unfairly by Canada. He says the trade deficit means that the U.S. is subsidizing the Canadian economy. You know, for someone who claims to have gone to the Wharton School of Business, this is just nonsense. The U.S. isn't subsidizing Canada any more than I'm subsidizing my local grocery store when I buy food. I give them money, they give me a product. Works the same way between countries that trade with each other. America has a trade deficit because it buys more from us than it sells to us. They're not giving us free money. You know, again, we seem to be seeing a repeat of Trump's first term where he likes to sow chaos around the globe. And I fear for his own people because they're going to be hurt as well. Elma?
Are people motivated enough to take action against the U.S., such as boycotting American products?
Elma, I haven't seen any organized efforts yet. Now, we've been hearing about this for weeks. We knew tariffs were coming. But so far, no one has started a boycott campaign, at least that I've heard of. Anecdotally, though, I've heard a few things. A travel agent in Vancouver says a number of her clients are canceling vacations to the United States. Some of that now might be because of the weak Canadian dollar, but others, well, they're seeking alternate destinations, places where our money and Canadians are appreciated. And here's another story. Someone needed to replace one of their appliances in their house, and this person decided instead of buying one that had been made in the U.S., they would buy an import from South Korea. And there are going to be a lot more of these kind of buying decisions as the tariffs that we put on, the ones that we put on American goods, go into effect. There's a lot of choice out there now, a lot of stuff being made in a lot of different countries. America's making a big mistake if it thinks it can survive as an economic island. But you know, Elma, sometimes people have to learn the hard way. Elma?
Thank you, Thomas, for your insight. President Donald Trump said the sweeping tariffs that he has imposed on Mexico, Canada, and China may cause short-term pain for Americans. As global markets reflected concerns, the levies could undermine growth and reignite inflation.
No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that. But long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country. Not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We have deficits with everybody. We help everybody. We've been helping everybody for years. And to be honest, I don't think they appreciate it. So we're going to change that. We're going to change it fast. We're going to make America great again. Well, it could happen. If they do anything, we will. Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. On Mexico, we've had very good talks with them. And this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada. It will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And, you know, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure that one, I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union it's an atrocity, what they've done.
Now, economists said the Republican president's plan to impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% tariffs on China, the United States' three largest trading partners, will slow global growth and drive prices higher for Americans.
I think it's fair to say that this is a lose-lose trade war. Both U.S. consumers and also Canadian and Mexican households stand to lose. The Tax Policy Center has just put out an analysis suggesting that after-tax U.S. household income could fall by 1% as a result of these tariffs. That's a cost of about $1,000 to the average U.S. household. Say if I am a U.S. household that imports or that consumes Canadian maple syrup, that maple syrup is going to become more expensive, and that's a direct price increase that households will face. But also, if I buy goods that are domestically produced in the US, but that are produced using inputs from Canada, the price of those goods is also going to go up. So for households, really, there's many different ways you can be exposed, but all these effects lead to higher prices. So one possibility is that the higher tariffs are here to stay. The more hopeful possibility will be that governments realize the costs that these tariffs may impose and try to reach a negotiated solution to remove the tariffs. So I think the Canadian and Mexican governments will be trying to talk with their US counterparts and work out kind of what kind of a deal could we reach that would allow both sides to remove the tariffs.
Meanwhile, a supply chain analyst said today that e-commerce companies may be the worst hit from U.S. President Trump's 10% tariff on imports from China, as it also contains a clause that revokes the de minimis duty-free exemption for low-value shipments below $800. Now, Chinese e-commerce giants like Temu and Shein, who have used this loophole to import goods into the U.S., could be the biggest hit. But even U.S. companies like Amazon could be affected. Asian stock markets slumped on Monday after U.S. President Trump's tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China triggered fears of a broad trade war and hit to global growth.
When you look at the executive order that the Trump administration did, it revoked the de minimis allowance for e-commerce goods into the U.S., such as Temu and Shein. So the biggest hit will be those players as well as Amazon, which ship a lot of those goods into the States. The players that will benefit most from this are companies that make those products domestically, or other companies that may make raw materials or other intermediate inputs that go into the supply chains of the U.S. So markets in the region are taking a hit. Every single one is in the red at the moment as of today's opening. A lot of that has to do with the uncertainty, meaning what is the roadmap? Is it the U.S. is trying to negotiate? Does this mean there will be further tariffs around the region because the U.S. wants more domestic manufacturing? It's really uncertain. So until we have a bit more certainty, we'll see some choppiness in the markets. In the China market, when it opens on Wednesday, we expect that it will also be in the red, but industries and companies that are focused more on domestic manufacturing, for example, domestic chip makers or infrastructure plays, we'll see more of that actually have a positive effect because of the domestic support that we're seeing. So the roadmap of tariffs moving forward is we expect that the U.S. will continue to put tariffs on most countries that they have a trade deficit with, particularly large. Think of the European Union, where the U.S. has a trade deficit with. Think of Vietnam, Thailand, these countries, Australia to some degree. And part of that is because the U.S. feels taken advantage of. They are taking our resources and our money, but not necessarily treating us in a fair way. Some of that is market access. Others are just the fact of fentanyl. Right? The U.S. is really unhappy with the fentanyl use because it's killing Americans. And so we're at the point now where the Trump administration feels emboldened to actually do something about it.
Now, ASEAN and other Asian economies could be in for a slowdown if the U.S. ramps up tariffs on China and other key trade partners. An analyst is warning that an even more aggressive protectionist policy could significantly impact regional growth, with ripple effects lasting years. Take a look.
Looking ahead to 2025 this year, we project regional growth to remain steady at 4.2%. Now, this is a slight downward revision from our October forecast of 4.4%, primarily reflecting a more challenging external environment, including in our baseline assumption an increase of U.S. tariff on China in the second half of 2025. For the plus 3 economies, we have revised our growth forecast down by 0.3 percentage points. For the ASEAN economies, growth projection has been reduced by a more marginal 0.1 percentage point. Let me elaborate on our scenario analysis for what we see as the most immediate risk, a more aggressive U.S. protectionist policy. In our baseline scenario, in our baseline forecast, we actually assume a 25% increase in tariff on Chinese imports in the second half of this year. However, given the uncertainty, we have also considered various other scenarios. Let me share with you 2 scenarios here. One is if the U.S. implements 60% tariff on China and 10% tariff on other economies. Without retaliation, regional growth could be lower by a further 0.1 percentage point this year. Second scenario, and a more concerning one, is if affected economies retaliate in kind. The impact will be substantially worse. Growth could be lower by 0.6 percentage points this year, and the negative effects will accumulate over time. By 2026, 2027, we could see growth being lower by 1 to 2 percentage points This will be the slowest regional growth since the Asian financial crisis, excluding the pandemic years.
Meanwhile, U.S. top diplomat Marco Rubio has warned Panama to immediately take steps to address U.S. concerns over Chinese businesses operating ports near the canal. Mark Castillo has more.
Panamanian President Jose Mulino says his country's sovereignty over the world's second busiest waterway is not up for discussion. And Trump has refused to rule out use of military force over Panama.
I don't think troops will be necessary in Panama. What Panama has done is terrible for national security for this part of the world. And, 70% of the signage on the Panama Canal was written in Chinese. That's not right. So it wasn't meant for China.
In a Senate hearing last week, U.S. officials said fines and restrictions on Panamanian flag vessels entering U.S. ports could be imposed due to the dispute over the canal. Molino described his meeting with Rubio as respectful and cordial. Molino also showed willingness to review some Chinese businesses in Panama. They include Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison Holdings, which operates ports at both entrances of the canal.
I would say that the most important topics discussed were those related to the Canal Treaty in relation to what President Trump has mentioned about the Chinese presence. In this sense, I voiced a defense. Of course, opening the considerations so that the technical team of the channel, with the one designated by the United States, can converge on this matter and clarify all the doubts that they may continue to have on this matter. We also talked a lot on the issue of Chinese ports in the canal, explaining to them that for the first time in the history of that concession from 1997 to date, such two ports belonging to the same company are audited by the corresponding authorities of the Republic of Panama, and that, as appropriate, we have to wait for that process to end to draw our own legal conclusions and act accordingly.
The contract with CK has been targeted by U.S. lawmakers and the government as an example of China's expansion in Panama. The Americans claim it goes against a neutrality treaty signed by both countries in 1977. Panama's government and some experts reject that assertion, mainly because the ports are not part of the canal's operations and have not represented a security issue. Rubio said last week that China could use the ports to shut down the canal, a vital route for U.S. shipping, in the event of a conflict between Beijing and Washington. Meanwhile, about 200 people marched in the capital on Sunday while the meeting was going on. They carried Panamanian flags and shouted Marco Rubio out of Panama. Some burned a banner with images of Trump and Rubio after being stopped short of the presidential palace by riot police. Mark Castillo for NET25 World News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is due to meet U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington on February 4. The meeting is set to take place amid a fragile 6-week ceasefire that has brought a temporary pause to 15 months of fighting between Israel and militant group Hamas in Gaza. Arlene Ocampo reports.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu left Israel Sunday. The Israeli chief is the first foreign leader to visit Trump since his inauguration last month.
The fact that this would be President Trump's first meeting with a foreign leader since his inauguration is telling. I think it's a testimony to the strength of the Israeli-American alliance. It's also a testimony to the strength of our personal friendship.
Netanyahu says the two will discuss a number of critical issues facing Israel and the region.
A victory over Hamas, achieving the release of all our hostages, and dealing with the Iranian terror axis and all its components, an axis that threatens the peace of Israel, the Middle East, and the entire world.
Netanyahu had strained relations with Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden, and has not visited the White House since returning to office at the end of 2022. Arlene Ocampo for NET25 World News.
Now, on November 21, 2024, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and his former defense chief, as well as a Hamas leader, Ibrahim al-Mazri, for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Gaza conflict. Now, the U.S., Israel's main diplomatic supporter, is also not a member of the ICC. Take a look.
Decision to issue an arrest warrant against me, the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and our former defense minister, was made by a rogue prosecutor who's trying to extricate himself from sexual harassment charges.
The arrest warrant is then issued by the prosecutor, and the arrest warrant becomes binding on any state that happens to have custody of the alleged war criminal. That's roughly how it works. It's very hard to enforce an arrest warrant. We've been here before with the South Africans and al-Bashir in Sudan, and there, the court didn't even make an order. It didn't, in fact, refer the matter to the Assembly of State Parties when the South Africans failed to surrender al-Bashir to the ICC. I mean, there's a legal question here and a political question. The political question really aligns around the relationship between diplomacy and law. You sort of lose the freedom to travel. So I think international law and international criminal law works in, mysterious ways. The enforcement of it doesn't always happen in a court. Sometimes somebody's just sitting down with their passport wondering where to go on holiday and discovers they can't go to 56 places, and that's a kind of form of enforcement. And the other thing I'd say is that you do get cases where people are surprisingly detained, sometimes by accident almost. The truth is that only with a change of government, and a pretty radical change of government in both those states, would you get into a situation where Netanyahu or Putin was arrested and surrendered to the ICC. But these things do happen. A week can be a long time in politics, and one can go from being a respected statesperson to being a war criminal. That's what happened to Slobodan Milosevic. He was the president of Yugoslavia and then Serbia. He was a negotiating partner at Dayton with NATO and so on. And then he found himself under arrest for war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. He died in jail. But so politics shifts, and arrest warrants are forever. So they've got an advantage over politics in a way in that sense.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back.
At rumaratyad ang usapan ng bayan.
Ihahatid namin sa 100%!
100% ang pagbabalita.
100% talakayan.
Lunes hanggang Biyernes.
Alas 5 hanggang alas 7 ng umaga.
Live na live sa Radyo Agila 1062 Mega Manila.
At sa NET25.
100%!
Sa NET25, let's get together. Sa NET25.
A new group of hostage exchanges in Gaza has brought relief to families on both sides of the conflict. And among those freed by Hamas is Israeli-American Keith Sigel, released at Gaza's seaport on Saturday alongside 2 other Israeli hostages.
Israeli-American Keith Sigel is released by Hamas at Gaza's seaport on Saturday, one of 3 Israelis handed over to the Red Cross in the latest exchange. Ofer Calderon, a French-Israeli dual national, was released in Khan Yunis, as was Yarden Bibas. The fate of Bibas's family is unknown. His baby son Kafir and 4-year-old Ariel were the youngest to be taken hostage by Hamas in the October 7th, 2023 attack. His wife Shiri is still missing too. Hours later, Palestinian prisoners and detainees got off buses in Khan Yunis, Gaza, and in Ramallah, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, greeted by jubilant and tearful crowds. They're among the 183 Palestinians who were due to be released in this part of the exchange. Saturday's handover in Gaza saw none of the chaotic scenes that overshadowed one 2 days earlier. when Hamas guards struggled to shield hostages from a surging crowd. Once again, there was a show of force by Palestinian militants, despite the heavy losses they suffered in more than 15 months of war. At the newly opened Rafah crossing, the first Palestinian patients were allowed to leave Gaza for Egypt, including children suffering from cancer and heart conditions. The World Health Organization's Rick Pieperkorn said evacuations needed to be ramped up for Gazan patients with traumatic war injuries as well as other conditions.
It's critically important that we speed up the medevac outside Gaza. WHO estimates that between 12 to 14,000 critical patients need to be medevaced outside Gaza. So what we need now is medical corridors.
These were rare scenes of joy after so much death. Israel's military campaign in Gaza killed at least 47,000 Palestinians and left much of the enclave in ruins. Hamas's attack, which sparked the war, killed 1,200 people in Israel, according to Israeli tallies. As the fighting has fallen quiet, diplomatic efforts to build a wider settlement have stepped up. Negotiations are due to start by Tuesday on the second phase of the deal, meant to see the release of the remaining hostages, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, and an end, at last, to the war.
Floodwaters are rising in North Queensland and authorities are urging thousands to move to higher ground. Now, one person has died after a state emergency service vessel capsized. 5 others were rescued. Australia's Weather Bureau says the heavy rain is coming from a moisture-rich, low-pressure system, with up to 300 millimeters expected in just 24 hours. The country has seen frequent flooding in recent years, including record-breaking floods in the Northern Territory last year during a prolonged La Nina event.
I'm asking Queenslanders to do all they can to make sure that you stay safe, and that means listening to warnings, responding as quickly as you can.
We saw 480 requests for assistance for our SES in the past 24 hours alone, and the Chief Officer of the SES informed me it's been their busiest night so far during the response. So the response is not over yet.
We are prepared for a scenario where rivers may continue to rise. We are prepared for a situation where high tides may impact different communities.
When the river bank broke, it just came down Mystic Avenue and wiped out one side of the street. Just everyone went underwater. Everyone's got water through their houses. There's a lot of people down there with no food, no power, obviously.
And before I go, I would like to greet Brother Frederick Santos and Mylene Santos, Sister Mayen Erica Santos, Brother Philip Noel Santos, Brother Peter Joseph Calaguas, Brother Onesto Briones from the locale of EGM Avenue, Pampanga North. Thank you so much for helping us yesterday get home. And also I would like to thank Sister Malu Francisco and Brother Max Francisco for their very generous accommodation for us. Thank you so much. And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.